This is Saturn Girl. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. Comment below because I want to know what you think and it helps me out with the algorithm. It feels like I've been talking non-stop about retrogrades. Venus was retrograde, Mercury was retrograde, Jupiter is retrograde, Saturn's retrograde. And now what? Mercury is stationing direct in just a few days on September the 15th. Let's take a quick look, shall we? You see here, here's fun little Mercury. And you can see this little RX thing here. They're still retrograde. So let's just go forward a couple of days here. So you see Mercury, right? He's going, and then what is happening here on the 15th? He's stationing, see that S? That means he's slowing down to stop again. And then he stations direct, which means he'll be moving in the correct direction again. And hopefully life will stop being so mischievous. So anyway, I was born with Mercury retrograde. So it's like the one time where I finally feel understood, you know? Well, for this video though, I wanted to talk a little bit about how Mercury retrograde went, share a couple of your retrograde stories, and then finish up with your favorite thing, horoscopes. Your horoscopes for Mercury going direct. You vultures love horoscopes. And they're tedious to write, but I do it for you because I'm so caring. You know, I'm so selfless and altruistic. Well, anyway, let's get into it. So so anyway, Mercury will remain in Virgo until October 4th. When they finally enter Libra. I say they because, you know, Mercury is sort of non-binary. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, first of all, what does Mercury rule again? Mercury is speech and thought, business and commerce, writing, messages, news, skills and learning, even deception, things like gambling, right? Well, what do retrogrades do? What do they mean? We're not going to talk about them astronomically because I do that in like 5 or 6 videos. But retrogrades bring reversals, which means a good situation could get worse, but a bad situation could get better, right? They also delay things. They slow things down. They also indicate things left undone that we have to backtrack to fix or clean up. Well, what happens typically during Mercury retrograde? We see agreements are broken. People get flaky. Communications are delayed. Reversals in fortune, having to do with the stuff that Mercury rules, of course. And technology failures, right? So anyway, what does Mercury retrograde mean for individuals then? Well, those significations we just talked about in general get very personalized. So number 1, in transit. So in transit, people from the past come and contact you. A lot of times it's exes, but sometimes it's old friends or bosses or whatever. Your phone. Oh my gosh, be careful with your phone. The big advice I give everyone during Mercury retrograde, like people get so worked up over Mercury retrograde, like, oh my God, Mercury's going retrograde. Oh, what am I going to do? I say 2 main things. I say, don't sign anything and don't drop your phone. Because those are the 2 things that are most likely to happen. That we make agreements that we regret later and that we ruin our devices or something happens to them. Typically, technology does wacky things to us. And again, people get flaky. They back out of agreements or they don't follow through. That includes you, right? So this is why I say don't sign anything. Don't commit yourself to things that you're dubious about. You might want to take on a new responsibility or role, but it'll bite you in the ass, right? Most likely. People will often say, that's not what I said, or I didn't agree to that. Even though you might even have them on a recording, you know. It wasn't me. It was the deep fake. That was AI, you know. So messages of all sorts get delayed. That's phone calls, text messages, snail mail. What else? Carrier pigeons, I don't know. Emails. Well, what if you have Mercury retrograde in your natal chart? Like me, right? I mean, we're a bit slow, you know. We're often the last person in a group to get jokes. It's like someone says, well, wrecked him, damn near killed him. And everyone just starts laughing. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I get jokes. Right? So it's a little embarrassing. Also, the slowness, our slowness can really hurt us during debates. It's not like we don't know what we're talking about or don't have our facts. It's that we have to slow down and understand and ruminate on what is going on. We have to reason it out in order to come up with typically a well thought out rebuttal. It's just once everyone's already left, you know. So the slowness can hurt us. We're not super quick. And then people constantly misunderstand us. We sound crazy. It's not that we don't know exactly what we're trying to say. It's that we speak like Yoda, you know. Oh, wars not make one great, you know. Or, what's the other thing too? Well, yeah, speaking like Yoda, but then being dyslexic. I mean, I am dyslexic. Not every person with Mercury retrograde is dyslexic, right? But it is a thing that we see. Sometimes learning disabilities or slow readers, things like that. But of course, it's just what we have to deal with. You know, some modern astrologers will say this just makes us more contemplative and introspective. I mean, I'm sort of an extrovert, but yeah, I can see that. Anyway, well, what was the deal with this particular Mercury retrograde? The thing here was that Mercury was closely following Saturn, right behind, or sorry, Mars. Mercury was closely following Mars, right behind him, when he was in Virgo. That means Mars likely caused conflicts in the area of life indicated by the house he was transiting for you. Then Mercury retrograde went back over those degrees. It was like he was sort of ironing shit out for us. The way I think of it is it's sort of like you put on shampoo right after you get someone's fun fluids in your hair, like Something About Mary. Oh, is that hair gel? Well, it doesn't smell like hair gel. That's bad. Anyway, Mercury going direct now is sort of like washing the shampoo out, right? I prefer to use leave-in conditioner because I got frizz worse than Miss Frizzle. You know, but that's a whole other thing. What about celebrities with Mercury retrograde? Well, we started talking about me. I'm not a celebrity, but I'm a good example. I'm slow. The last person to get jokes, as we talked about. I had to think for a bit, and I can't come up with rapid answers, which makes people like, gotcha. Well, no, you don't got me. You don't. Because you don't have your facts straight like I do. I just have to think about them. So anyway, also people constantly misunderstand me. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, all the sort of Mercury retrograde neuroses that pop up, right? Also, this is kind of an interesting aside, that Mercury rules my 8th house and is placed in my 4th house, retrograde. My dad passed away when I was 20, which is just about exactly a Mercury minor period, for those of you who know what planetary minor periods are. Just an interesting aside. And my progressed Mercury, stationed direct when I was about 5, and I had this big experience that you can hear all about in other videos. But it's sort of what put me on this path. So, well, anyway, Mercury also rules my 5th house of children and fun. I didn't have my daughter till I was 30. And I didn't really start having fun till I was 37. So, I mean, my romantic life really started popping off around that time. I mean, everyone has phases and stuff, but I was married for a long time. So, of course, everything started popping off later as I approached 40. Well, who else has this? Hillary Clinton. I guess, well, I'm not going to pull up her chart, but let's suffice it to say that the slowness does make us suck at debates. And Hillary Clinton has not been a great debater. Not a master debater. I wonder if she's... Anyway, I won't go into that. She's also sort of stuck in the past. It's been hard for her to adapt to the new times, right? I mean, she just got trounced in 2016, you know, and even since, she's basically been relegated to obscurity. She's tried to be relevant in media, but it really hasn't worked. She's a product of the past. Mercury rules her first house of self, right? She's a Gemini rising, apparently. And her fourth house of father and homeland. And the beliefs of our fathers. She was raised very politically conservative. Her father was very, very conservative, of course. And she worked on conservative presidential campaigns. For example, Barry Goldwater, for those of you who know who he is. It's a bit much, okay? Barry Goldwater. Her social beliefs, though, began to change when she got into college, right? And she started participating in the civil rights movement. Having her fourth house ruler in the sixth house of illness, though, and hard work, made her father a bit of a workaholic and a little bit of a rival. I have the same thing. My dad was a workaholic, and we didn't always see eye to eye. Having the first house ruler, though, in the sixth house like she does, of enemies and illness, can signal someone who is ruthless and typically mean-spirited, or someone who faces insurmountable odds and doesn't get their big break. Or it could be all of the above. Oh, you could see that all with Hillary Clinton. Another one I liked was Robert Downey Jr. I thought this was interesting because fame really happened for him later in life. If you're old like me, 40, right, then you remember him in Back to School, right, with Rodney Dangerfield, where he played like the goth friend. Anyway, they had Oingo Boingo in that movie performing live. Dead Man's Party. It's a dead man's party. Who could ask for more? Everybody's come and leave your body at the door. Anyway. Great song. Great band. It was headed up by Danny Elfman, who became famous working with Tim Burton, doing everything, including the Simpsons theme. I think that, yeah, that was Danny Elfman. So anyway, Robert Downey Jr.'s life was basically put on hold because of drug and alcohol abuse that he learned from his father. Remember that old Dare commercial? I learned from watching you, Dad. I learned from watching you. I mean, he really did learn from watching Dad. And Dad apparently could only bond with him when they were using together, which is very sad. Very sad. So he ended up blowing through his money, trying to get drugs all the time. And you can sort of see that because he has Mars in the second house, with Mercury retrograde ruling that second house of money and finances and our stuff, right? Now, Mercury also rules his 11th house of hopes, wishes, and fame. Retrograde delays all that. And he didn't get his big break until he starred in Iron Man, right? I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday, but I guess, what, like 10 years ago? But you see, all that happened later in life. Feels like it was just yesterday to me. Marvel movies. Whatever. They're so formulaic now. Anyway, well, what happened while Mercury was retrograde in Virgo? Remember, Mars and Mercury together often brings big conflicts and reversals in the news. So August 23rd, right? This is the day Mercury stationed retrograde. A plane crashed. A plane with the Wagner Group founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin. I don't know how do you say his first name, but Prigozhin was on board. effectively ending his life. And Prigozhin did what? He led a mutiny against Russian military leadership, but called it off after negotiations, which included banishing Prigozhin to a country, Belarus, right? However, his plane crashes en route, and some analysts think that Russia was involved. I don't know. It does look a little scandalous, though. So, anyway, talk about reversals, right? He was supposed to make it back to Belarus. It looked like he was challenging Russia. In fact, friends of mine were like, oh my God, he's gonna hit Moscow, right? Moscow. Well, no, it didn't work out that way. And then reversal, his plane crashed. So August 24th, how about that? This is the day after Mercury stations retrograde. What happened there? Donald J. Trump surrenders to the FBI and poses for his newly famous mugshot at the Fulton County Jail. With an indecipherable look on his face. It's like a scowl, but I can't tell if he's about to cry, or if he's upset, or if he's going to whine. I don't know. Or if he just has to go to the bathroom. All of it is equally possible. Well, anyway, literally the next day, on the 25th, the Trump campaign raises $4.1 million, right? In one day, by selling merch with that mugshot on it and a caption that read, "Never surrender," which is sort of ironic because he surrendered. So, anyway, the cognitive dissonance aside, just a couple weeks ago, though, legal experts say that Trump likely violated copyright law by selling that merch because the Fulton County Jail retains all rights to all mugshots. Oh. Now, I don't think anyone's going to do anything about it, right? It would cause too much of a stir. However, you know, it is the thing. But you notice how these are examples of reversals, right? Particularly to do with negotiations and business and this sort of stuff. What else happened? Well, around Labor Day, I think that was last weekend, Elon Musk publicly blamed the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, also known as the ADL, and threatened to sue them. What did he blame them for? For running his stupid company into the ground. Twitter, formerly known as, oh wait, no, X, formerly known as Twitter, right? I always think of like DMX, X gon' give it to you, gon' give it to you, X gon' give it to you. That's what I think of when I hear X. I think of DMX. To me, he's the original X, besides X. But I won't go there. I was a raver back in the day, when I was in high school. So anyway, reversals. Labor Day, Elon Musk, right? Now, he doesn't want to take responsibility for him running his own company into the ground. He even popularized the hashtag ban the ADL. And this was picked up by actual anti-lights, right? And supremacists. So he's really keeping good company, isn't he? Well, now he's also threatening to do a giant data dump, which may even be illegal. And this is another example of reversals. Mercury rules data and information and electronics and technology. So, this guy, I tell you, he's really good at messing things up, isn't he? Well, a couple of you sent me Mercury retrograde stories, and I thought I'd share a couple of my own before we do horoscopes. So how about me? Well, I racked up a good amount of credit card debt. I had surgery. I flew my mom and brother out to come, stay with me while I recovered from surgery. Our dog passed away and I had to pay for euthanasia, right? It was just a lot of unforeseen expenses. So my credit card bill was sort of overwhelming. But, well, and also, my dog passed away. I mean, that's very 8th house, isn't it? But Mercury brought reversals also of that debt situation because I was able to pay a lot of it off after I got a little lucky, right? With readings and some other things. And it did help that Mercury was also trine Jupiter at the time. So it's some good news, right? Now, technology issues to do with streaming. I did my first live stream in a while after, my surgery and everything else. And of course, the software wasn't working. Well, at least I thought it wasn't. I go back on later and all these stupid little 2-minute videos show up with me just cussing and cursing the software. Oh, and my insurance plan was discontinued and I had to scramble to find another one. Literally the day on August 31st, right? Literally got one that day and everything terminated September 1st. So, oh my God. Also, several partners from the past contacted me. One who I'm excited about, who I'm going to catch up with. So, I think she was probably the nicest one I ever had. Anyway. Let's go on. You don't want to hear about all that. What about stories from you all? So here, this is one from one of you. I met my sister-in-law from Jersey at a museum 30 minutes from my house in Pennsylvania. After I invited her and my nieces to come over to the house. I thought I didn't need a GPS because the drive back was pretty simple. I accidentally missed an exit, drove 20 minutes in the wrong direction, and didn't realize I crossed the state line till my poor sister-in-law is nearly to my house, and I'm further away than when we left. Oh my God, I turn on my GPS and it tries to send me down a closed road, and then a road completely blocked by an accident. Delays, right? Especially in short travel. My daughter has a natal Mercury retrograde, like me. And the first day she got a call that she had been, the first day she got a call that she had been cast for her first big role in a play at the community theater. She has loved theater for a few years, and her chart ruler is Leo in the 5th house. I think maybe she's saying the sun in the 5th house. Is the sun in the 5th house. But up until that point, she's had to deal with lots and lots of disappointments. Her Capstellium with the Cancer moon is real sensitive and hard on herself. But she's able to turn that determination into success in the long run. Yes, reversals. You see, this was an example of a frustrating situation. She keeps getting passed up and discouraged with disappointments. But then we have a reversal during retrograde, and it wasn't a bad reversal. Well, what's the next one here? Excuse me. This guy, profile, not picture, I'll explain that too. Okay? This guy that was supposed to be my twin flame, we really have some intense aspects. I'll give you that. So in February, he and I both started seeing people. He went straight back to being toxic, and I made sure to leave the situation well enough alone. I do like to check in on him now and then to watch him spiral and everything he put me through. Okay? Well, Venus retrograde did what she does, and then we broke up. Then Mercury retrograde comes around, and he's deleting all their old pictures off his profile and putting up pictures of men that aren't him. I have no idea who or why, but anywho, I finally had a story with, deception. So, I mean, that's a funny example. But let's move on to horoscopes, because now we're like 25 minutes in and you people will get super frustrated with me. So, well, anyway, horoscopes here are for each rising sign. So if you know your rising sign, this will be especially fun. If you don't know your rising sign, get your birth time. If you can't get your birth time, then look at this for your sun sign. Okay? Excuse me. But remember here, for each of these, we're considering Mars's influence. And then Mercury retrogrades realization. And then Mercury directs consequent action. Okay? Well, let's start off with Aries. Come here, chart. Let's go to Aries Rising. Let's go to Aries Rising. I should have had Aries queued up. There we go. So Aries Rising, this means Mercury is in what? Your 6th house of obligations and rules your 3rd house of community and extended family. You may have noticed a big surge or rush of energy and started trying to get things done or knocking stuff off the list, right? But you may have been a bit careless. So Mercury retrograde probably showed you where you cut corners, or maybe where you rushed through things, and now you have to readdress them. You may have even gotten into a car accident, or had some road rage, or gotten in fights with neighbors or people around your community. You know, this is also why we say road rage. The 3rd house is also like our commutes and our errands and things like that around town. So Mercury direct now, though, is about prompting you to focus and pay attention. Take care and be methodical. Be thorough, right? Double check your work. Cross your I's and dot your T's, or you know what I'm saying. So pay attention. Focus. Anyway, let's go to Taurus Rising now. That means Mercury's in your 5th house of children and fun and rules your 2nd house of money, right? Finances. So you may have had to struggle with your kids. They may have been combative or unruly, or they just maybe were very expensive, right? You may have also had to spend some money on fun things, or maybe it was just being competitive. I don't know. Sports, you know, gambling, things like that. But see, Mercury retrograde likely showed you where personal reactions were causing you trouble, especially with your kids and probably also with spending money. Having fun should not have to be a struggle, should it? Excuse me. Now, Mercury direct may show you that running around and spending money isn't always fun. You may find yourself being more inclined to relax and slow down. Also, talk to your kids and set expectations. And the hard part, though, is holding yourself to those expectations. That means following through, right? You know, oftentimes our kids do something silly and we're like, we know we're supposed to follow through, and then we don't. But we have to make ourselves do it, otherwise we lose everything. We need consistency. Well, how about Gemini Rising now? So for Gemini Rising, that means Mercury's in your 4th house and rules your 1st house of self. That means you may have noticed that you've been struggling with your past and with tradition, right? Maybe your parents as well. Maybe your past doesn't define you anymore, and you probably don't relate to it anymore. It's likely that you rebelled against any attempt to control you, because this is about independence. Maybe you also got into it with landlords, the 4th house. You know, the 4th house is usually home, family, your father, your origins, your past. Mercury retrograde, though, likely made you prioritize, made your priorities more clear to you, right? You're probably breaking with tradition to forge your own path. And we have to decidedly do that. When we get crystallized into old patterns that don't really hold any meaning anymore, then we're avoiding progress. We're avoiding advancement. Mercury going direct is about forging that path of yours, your own path, and discovering your own way. This is about establishing your identity outside of tradition and being yourself, regardless if anyone fucking approves of it, especially your parents. Or maybe they've already passed away, and it is your landlord. I don't know. Anyway, let's go on to Cancer Rising. So Cancer Rising, that means Mercury's in your 3rd house of community and extended family, and also rules your 12th house of self-undoing. This often indicates, again, road rage, right? The 3rd house. Car accidents, cars breaking down, bad news, right? 12th and 3rd house together. Bad news, or fights with family. You may have even been the instigator, right? Which would have bitten you in the ass. alienated you, perhaps. Mercury retrograde, oops, sorry, bit you in the ass. Mercury retrograde probably prompted you to walk it back a little bit, to pick your battles. This is an impulsive transit, and it could encourage you towards self-destructive behavior. That's the 12th house, right? But Mercury direct is all about being careful with your energy, economizing, right? What's that mean? It means learning how to be judicious with your energy, because running around will burn you out, right? You'll need to be more conscious of your energy expense. But let's move on to our Leo Rising friends. So for Leo Rising, you may have felt compelled to spend money, either on stuff that you want by necessity, either stuff that you want or stuff that you need, right? So you may have been overly optimistic about your finances, though, or you were influenced by friends, or maybe you did something fun with a friend, or you took a trip or something, like a big party, I don't know, but something where you spent a good amount of money, most likely. So Mercury retrograde would probably have sobered you up a little bit and made you wince at your situation, you know, regret a little bit of that expenditure. And Mercury direct then is about being more responsible, but also maintaining that same optimism, because it's very important that you don't get discouraged, right? You can only do better from here. Be optimistic. Have some faith in yourself. Well, let's go to Virgo Rising. So Virgo Rising, that means Mercury is in your first house of self and rules your 10th house of action and life direction. Pardon me. Mercury probably gave you a load of energy. Sorry, Mars probably gave you a load of energy in the first house, but probably also made you agitated, aggressive, or overly confident, especially at work. You may have been competitive with coworkers or even bosses. Mercury retrograde, though, probably popped your inflated ego, which isn't fun for Virgo, because it's not like you often get that. Well, I don't know. I mean, some of you do, like Steve Jobs or Billy Corgan, some famous people. So you may find that pushing too hard actually sets you back. You may have missed an opportunity or alienated yourself from others, probably because you've been putting out fires, right? Or maybe you've been reconsidering the path you've chosen. But then Mercury direct would be about regaining that confidence through competing with yourself more than others, in a healthy way, growing and achieving new goals regularly. You may find that what you thought you wanted doesn't suit you anymore, and you may rediscover why. Or you may rediscover why you do what you do. It's like a mission statement, right? Like, does anyone remember Jerry Maguire? Mission statement? Anyway, I always mention that movie. I don't know why. Well, how about our Libra Rising friends? So for Libra Rising, that put Mercury then going through your 12th house and ruling your 9th house of wisdom and spirituality. So you likely felt cut off from others, right? Which probably made you feel melancholy or depressed, or both. They're the same thing, I just love synonyms. Anyway, maybe you've been struggling with what you believe. Mercury retrograde, though, probably made you start questioning your destructive patterns of thinking. It could have to do with your ideology, or it could be that you're your own worst enemy right now, and you've been beating yourself up better than anyone else could, Like, why even have enemies when you have yourself? Well, but then Mercury direct is about facing some of the trauma that you've been carrying around with you like luggage. The guilt, the blame, the resentment. Do you remember Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol? That ghost that first goes to meet Mr. Scrooge. It was like his former business partner. And he's just weighed down in chains. All these chains. Woo! You know. With the theremin. I mean, it's Halloween-ish time. It is, I mean, Halloween's like a whole 3-month ordeal for me. So, but you see what I'm saying? Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol. And we're like that with our traumas, carrying all these things around with us. And it was Carl Jung that said, a lot of our mental illness is rooted in our unwillingness to deal with and process things that are very painful. But faith, having something higher than yourself to put your trust in when everything else seems dark, can be life-saving. So I encourage you all to have something higher than yourself to put your faith and trust in. But let's move on to Scorpio Rising. Our Scorpio Rising friends. So this means Mercury is going through your 11th house of hopes and friends, but rules your 8th house of death and debt and other people's stuff, right? So you may have been cut off, right? Or had fights with friends. Sorry, you may have cut people off after having fights with friends. People may owe you money, or you may owe them. But either way, you likely said some things that you wish you hadn't said, okay? Maybe you alienated yourself or others by being an asshole. Mercury retrograde, though, is about recognizing your mistakes, admitting when you've been wrong, and it can be a slow and uncomfortable realization, can it? Mercury direct, though, is about having the emotional maturity to reconcile and make amends with people when you have to. Does that mean you don't stand up for yourself and represent your own interests? It means that when you realize that you had culpability in something or you had blame in something, you do your best to rectify the situation. Now, what about our Sagittarius Rising friends? So for Sagittarius Rising, Mercury's in your 10th house of action and life direction, right? And rules your 7th house of relationships and partnerships and marriages. So you may have been experiencing conflicts with authority figures, right? Because Mars was going through that 10th house. And usually that ends up being bosses, but it could also be co-workers, or it could be even losing face in some way at work. Maybe a scandal that tarnishes your reputation. It doesn't have to be like, you know, Watergate or, you know, what, Watergate scandal in order to give you a little bit of a bad rap. It could be something very small, but still. Well, but Mercury retrograde is about seeing how your ambition then may alienate you. If everyone else becomes competition, you may realize that you've pushed people away who could actually help you. Maybe even a spouse or partner. But see, then Mercury direct is about repairing relationships, developing a clear strategy for achieving your goals. And it's likely that you'll need other people to succeed. So don't throw people away. Don't alienate people. And please, you may regret things you've said later, so just think about if they're worth saying. Okay. Well, how about our Capricorn Rising friends? So for Capricorn Rising, this means Mercury is now in your 9th house of wisdom and spirituality, but rules your 6th house of obligations and enemies and, well, even pets. So you've probably been a bit of a fanatic over the last few months or so, or last month or so. Maybe you got into ideological, philosophical, or spiritual arguments with people. Your views have probably been quite important, especially if they were challenged. Or you may have felt a break from them, right? Mercury cuts things off. It's a slice, right? So you may have cut yourself off from those things. Maybe it had to do with your beliefs about another culture or another group of people that were challenged. You see, because then Mercury retrograde is about reconsidering what you believe and whether or not it's just been something to cling to, right? We talked about the crystallization of these past patterns. You may have realized that your preconceived notions were wrong. Mercury direct, then, is all about exploring new ways of thinking, or even a foreign language or foreign culture, right? If you had realized that your bigotry or preconceived notions were wrong, right? Because that's also a part of this. So you may develop a more inclusive worldview as a consequence. From these experiences, you get a wider appreciation for groups other than your own, right? So anyway, well, let's go on to Aquarius Rising. This is me, right? So this means Mercury is in our 8th house of investment and debt and letting go, and rules the 5th house of children, fun, and romance. I love those things. So anyway, you likely racked up some credit card debt over the past few months, or some kind of debt. I mean, I know I did. Alternatively, though, you may have been plagued by old memories and traumas from childhood. That happened to me too. The worst case scenario is there could have been a death or a loss. Also happened to me, my dog passed. Well, Mercury retrograde is about starting to pay things off. Whether that's a literal debt paid with money or forgiveness. Because to me, forgiveness is something of the 8th house. Forgiveness releases us from an emotional debt, right? It's not for them, it's for us. It's to free us from being owed or owing. You can't undo the things you've done, but you can resolve to do better. And you can practice doing better every moment afforded to you. Sometimes this process, though, does include grief. And then Mercury direct is about moving on. We never fully get over things, do we? But we do press on with more understanding and wisdom. Loss is one of the greatest teachers that we go through, isn't it? It's through loss that we realize nothing is permanent and everything is passing away. If we learn to use those experiences properly, we can also learn to really appreciate the moment, every moment, to taste it, to feel it, to feel its subtle caress. It's always there, always waiting for us, to recognize it, to tap into it. Now I'm preaching. So let's move on for this. Okay, our last stop here is Pisces Rising, which means Mercury's in your 7th house of partners and relationships, but rules your 4th house here, right, of parents and home and all that fun stuff. So you may have had conflicts with your parents, a partner or a spouse, and it could have involved one or both of your parents or their parents. Maybe someone doesn't approve of someone else. Or maybe there's like a perception of mistreatment, like, oh, they don't treat my dear little, Billy well enough, or whatever. You probably felt a need to stand up for yourself. That's what I'm guessing. After you just took it and took it and took it for so long, and then you're like, no more. You see, and then Mercury retrograde is about reconciling those conflicts, isn't it? Did you realize that you had culpability or feel the need to resolve things? Maybe you had to end a relationship or cut it off, right? Or maybe you got cut off. Someone had to separate from you. Either way, though, there were probably some tough decisions. You see, Mercury direct, though, here is about letting go, letting people go when you have to. Sometimes when we let them go, they return to us, right? Like a bird or a butterfly from that old adage. Yeah. but 99% of the time they're just gone. And we don't really get to have fulfilling relationships with anyone until we're willing to let them go. Because when we're too scared for someone to leave, we allow ourselves to be treated in all sorts of crappy ways. And then we get even more resentful. So, gosh. We eventually get to choose what we're willing to tolerate in relationships. But it's up to us to hold to our boundaries, because no one else will do it for us. So, and people are very content to steamroll your boundaries. So, well, I hope this was useful. These horoscopes and some of the other stuff. Please, please, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell to get notified for when my videos drop. And comment below because it also helps me. Check out all my other videos. There's just tons of entertaining and educational content that I've done. I also do wonderful readings. They're scientifically proven to be the best. Okay. All my contact information is below in the description. I love you. You're beautiful. And have a wonderful whatever it is you're having.